All right, so that was what happened on the floor of the Senate weeks ago while they considered the clause on devolution of power. But the call for restructuring is back in the burner, and we're starting with that today. Mark, where?
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. You have with us Senator Timothy Adudu, who was a senator in the 5th Assembly. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
What do you make of this recent calls? I mean, we know that the conversation has been on for a while. It seemed to have been on a brief break, but it looks like the conversation has resumed again. What do you make of the call for restructuring? What comes to your mind when you hear restructuring, restructuring, restructuring?
Yes, in the history of the world, nations have always had reasons to meet, to discuss and restructure, discuss and to see how they can move forward by finding a consensus. So in the case of Nigeria, it's nothing new in view of what history has told us has happened globally. But the unfortunate thing about that of Nigeria is that it's about 57 years now, and we're still trying to find our rhythm politically, trying to find our present altitude politically. But better late than never. When Nigeria was, when we got our independence in 1960, we had the regions. And that, to my mind, that was the nearest we got to having a perfect solution politically to our multifarious existence as a nation. Nigeria is comprised of more than 300 ethnic groups. So the regions fitted us very well at the start. And when the military came in 1966, I think, and then the war broke out in 1967, to my mind, the first mistake we made as a nation was the creation of 12 states by General Gowon.
For you, was a mistake?
It was a mistake.
Why do you say so?
Yeah. It was a mistake in the sense that if you look at the creation of 12 states was a war necessity, it was a war strategy. And it was okay at that time, agreed. I'm not faulting it at that time. It was, the need for the 12 states was there because even if you look at the regions as they were existing at that time, there were complaints by the minority ethnic groups in those regions. So Gowon seized advantage of that to create states, and people welcome it. But if you look at the overall structure, as it were, the regions, that was the nearest we could get as far as I'm concerned.
But you know, there were also questions as to whether or not the regions were not too powerful to the detriment of the center.
Well, but if you look at, if you fast track to today, you will see that our attitude is towards regions. Even if you have, the federal states as we have today, if you go to for instance, you go to the National Assembly, you have the Northern Senators Forum, you have the Southeast Caucus, you have the Southwest Caucus. What does that mean when you have states? It's a reflection, it's the attitude of the mind towards regions. I'm not saying the regions were perfect. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that they were near to getting us to have a political platform or a political system, political philosophy that could have taken us forward as opposed to what we're having now. So when Gowon created the 12 states, it became a tradition for all military aberration or usurpation to create states. That was what they were using. How come is it that throughout our democracy, we were not able to create states? So if we had maintained the regions and fine-tuned, as it were, I'm sure we wouldn't have been in the serious need for restructuring as it is today.
So would you say then that we should go back to the region system?
Well, a lot has happened. There is a lot of water has passed under the bridge. Should we go back to the regions as it is? The answer will not be a simple yes, because so much has happened. And the initial fear that existed, that you had the creation of states, is still there. The fear of the minority groups within these bigger ethnic groups. They might be swallowed, so the fear is still there. So what I'm trying to say is that, yes, while we need to restructure within the context of what we have now, we should also bear in mind that going back simplicity to religions, as it were, might not give us an easy solution.